Hello, my name is Kim Peterz-Dent. I am a university lecturer at Governor State University in the College of Education in Early Childhood.
Hi, I'm Amy Kelly. I'm an assistant professor at Governor State University in the early childhood program. And our other presenter is...
Hi, I'm Katy Hisrich. I'm an associate professor in the College of Education at Governor State University.
Thank you for giving us some of your time so that we can share with you understanding diverse perspectives through children's literature, a culturally responsive teaching or CRT approach. So during our time together today, we're going to be going through the following. So we're going to look at an introduction, culturally responsive teaching, literature, and CRT practices. We'll be using CRT interchangeably with culturally responsive teaching, how to choose diverse books, strategies to use diverse literature. We'll go a little bit deeper into race, gender, families, exceptional learners, and then we'll have a closure and some reflection.
So for our introduction, there's a self-inventory bias that Harvard University did. It's called Project Implicit. And if we were in person, we'd be taking this quiz. But I recommend that you actually take this quiz, and basically it takes about 10 minutes, and you can actually see your implicit associations about race, gender, sexual orientation, and other topics. So if you could reflect for a minute, recall an incident that occurred early in your life in which you felt different from people around you. So picture this incident in your head. What happened? How did you feel? How did this incident influence the choices you made or make about the future?
So let's keep these reflections in mind as we move forward during our time together. So as educators, we can begin to understand diverse perspectives by embracing culturally responsive practices, teaching practices. So CRT, or culturally responsive teaching, this means that we're valuing the cultural knowledge of our students and the experiences that they bring to the classroom. So we're making those connections and making meaningful and effective learning experiences for them, as well as adding culturally responsive literature. So Gay and Howard state that as educators, we should not look through a deficit lens, but look at what the children and students bring to the classroom as a celebration. So look at those cultural characteristics of students and figure out how to adequately teach them instead of just using those traditional teaching practices. So when we provide those intentional, culturally responsive spaces for students, we can expect to see some academic and social benefits of this space that we've provided through culturally responsive instruction and literature. So when we do that, we can look to see some increased engagement, increased motivation and stamina and fluency, and some support in helping them to master these comprehension strategies, as well as students to connect their lives and increase the relevance of literature and build that connection between school and home. So these are the 7 principles of CRT. Students are affirmed in their cultural connections, or kids get it that we get them. Just to go back a little bit, these principles are grounded in the acknowledgement of race, religion, family background, gender, culture, sexual orientation, and student learning style. So going back to 1, students are affirmed in their cultural connections. So kids get it that we get them. Teachers are personally and culturally inviting. Kids get it that we like them. The learning environment is culturally and personally inviting. So school looks like me, diversity is here, it's honored. 4, students are reinforced for academic development. So we're catching kids being smart, and adjust instructional strategies to accommodate kids. So singing harmony to a kid's song. So we're working alongside them. Classroom is managed with firm, consistent, and loving controls and respect begins with the teacher. And then the last one, interaction stress collectively as well as individually, mixing it up in the classroom. So we're giving that space or allowing that space for collaboration or individual work in the class. So here are 10 tools. It's 5 listed on this slide and the rest of them are on the next slide. But these are 10 tools to move towards success in a culturally diverse setting. So this is where you're going to start doing some self-work and self-reflection. So I'd just like you to review some of these briefly. I'm looking really at number 2, develop the capacity to use a flashlight on ourselves and to help identify bias. This in turn will help you appropriately act on it. Create opportunities for positive exposure. So we're going to move on to the other list. We have 5 here, and then here are the others. Tools to continue to move towards success in this diverse, culturally diverse setting. Let's focus a little bit on number 9, reduce your level of guilt, which will only shut you down. This is a work in progress. It's a process. So things are not going to happen overnight. So just give yourself some grace and continue to commit to this work. So for more information on CRT, you can visit this website, culturallyresponsive.org, and then also check out these books, which were written by some really professionals in that area to help deepen your understanding. So I'd like you to read this quote and then jot down any thoughts or reflections that resonate with you. Okay, let's move on to culturally responsive teaching practices and literature. So this is a graphic of the Big 8. So the Big 8 comprises of 8 major identities that help us understand who we are and where we come from. And while this list is not all encompassing, it gives us an opportunity to explore some of our social groups, our social group memberships, and some of them we were born into, but not all of them. And it helps us to understand who we are, who others are, and helps us to honor human dignity and create authentically inclusive spaces. So we talked about CRT. So now we're going to talk about that connection with CRT and literature. So many people think about, when they think about diverse literature, they think of it as like multicultural literature, but it is so much more. So I'd like you to focus on the definition over to the right by Naito. Diverse literature refers to cultural diversity. Culture includes shared characteristics that define how a person lives, thinks, and creates meaning. So if you follow me with this quote, and then kind of think about what resonates with you and kind of jot down any reflections that you might have also. The students who walk into the learning environment deserve and must be educated and see themselves in literacy and in the world in which we all live. So jot down any thoughts that you might have about that. But I wanted you to also look at what diverse literature includes. It talks about ethnicity, includes race, family composition, ancestry, ability. We're going to talk about ability a little bit later, sexual orientation, social economic status, language fluency, citizenship status, religious preference, age, gender expression, education level, and domicile. So before we move on, if you would just take a moment to reflect on reasons why you might or might not use diverse literature in your classroom. So just fill in the blanks. I feel blank when reading or discussing books about other races and their experiences because this could be a very positive experience, or maybe you're not so certain and confident about using these books, but this is your brave space and this will be for your eyes only. So take a minute to complete that reflection. Okay, let's move on to teacher beliefs and its effect on mirrors and windows in children's literature. So in the beginning of our session, you did a little bit of reflection on your biases and your personal experiences. So this all plays an important role in how we choose books that are just right for our classroom. So as we're going to be moving in our time together and give you some tools to be able to effectively choose those books. But these are some of the areas that we have to focus on when we are choosing just right books for our classroom. So children deserve to read and engage with books that are rich, with characters that are like them, and with characters that are different from them. There's very limited professional development, however, which we'll talk about that a little bit later too, but teachers are responsible for bringing this rich literature into the classroom. And a lot of teachers don't know how to choose those appropriate books. So educators have to take it upon themselves to create an environment conducive to our students seeing mirrors and windows in the classroom. So when we say mirrors, children are able to see themselves. When we say windows, children are able to look through those windows and look into the lives of other people, students, and other friends that are not like us. Okay, so the impact of diverse literature through read alouds. So stories are powerful and have a great influence on a child's perception. Children's literature can serve as a window to peer into the lives of others and reflect as mirrors in their own. That's by Bishop. I mentioned that previously. In 2018, out of 3,653 books, the CCBC, they noticed that, and they documented that there were only 405 books about African and African Americans, 55 about Native Americans, 315 about Asian or Pacific, and 249 about Latinx. So the CCBC is a cooperative children's book center, and they note and categorize the diverse literature that comes through that is going to be put out for publication. So to connect the importance of using literature and CRT and showing those different perspectives, literature is a wonderful way to expose children to the world. It helps validate their own lives. It helps them to see other people's lives. And it can help to start those conversations that we are not very comfortable with starting. So sometimes we just don't know how to start those difficult conversations, and literature brings us all to the table. So let's do a little bit of reflecting. So take some time to think about a diverse book you might or might not have presented to your students. And I'd like you to think about what made you choose the book and how did your students respond to the book and the content. And then think about a time if you did not choose a particular book, why didn't you select it? Was the topic too difficult to talk about? Did it make you uncomfortable? And why did it make you uncomfortable? If we were in person, we would have this extra space and extra time to take this 5 minutes to do this reflection. However, we're going to allow you to do some reflection outside of this time that we have together. Okay, so we've talked about the connection with CRT books and culturally responsive teaching. So now we're going to talk about how to choose these books and to choose quality, diverse literature. So sometimes we don't know what to pick. So this is what this section will be about. So as I mentioned before with the CCBC, they are an organization that kind of is like a watchdog kind of organization that looks for how diversity is portrayed in books in a positive way. So this is the overall industry according to race, gender, orientation, and disability. And you can visit Lee and Low Books. They have lots of additional information on diversity and diverse literature. Okay, so again, this is a very reflective time because it is looking into our biases and in our personal experiences to make sure that we're choosing the appropriate books for our students. So how do we choose books that integrate various perspectives which focus on diversity and inclusion? So I'd like you to think about that as we continue to move on. So what to do when you don't know what to do? As we mentioned before, there are a lot of teachers who don't know what to look for or what to do when we are trying to pick out effective and high quality diverse literature. So in many cases, teachers are not addressing their own biases when they're choosing the books. They don't know how to do it because they don't have the knowledge. So again, going back to what we discussed before about your biases, what are your biases when you're choosing books for your class? So again, if you take this time to just write in this safe space that no one is going to be able to see, this is a reflective time, and then you can continue this reflection outside of this time that we have together. So addressing the literacy elephant in the room. So there was a study by OY in 2013, and it addressed how teacher candidates perceived multicultural education. And admittedly, they did not know how to pick out books that were high quality. They didn't know what to teach with the books. So they did make sure that they acknowledged that they needed more work, more professional development. So as educators, we have to ask ourselves, are we making connections to the children that we're teaching? And then when a teacher picks a book to share with children, it's sending a very important message to the children about who we are as teachers, what our school is about, and what we value. So here are some characteristics of high quality, diverse books. We want to make sure that the characters and the culture are represented with authenticity, that there's familiar content, familiar language, authentic scenery, diverse characterization, and diversity of setting, which we'll go into each one of those shortly. So some questions that we can ask when we are selecting these books about characters and culture. Are the culture and language accurately portrayed from the point of view from someone inside the group? Does a book capture experiences, values, and attitudes that resonated with members of the cultural group depicted? Are these stereotypes avoided for gender, racial, and cultural? Does the book represent positive images of urban culture? And does the book show diversity within and across human cultures when we talk about those human cultures, lifestyle, social, economic, race, age, ethnicity? In regards to context, does a book depict a familiar context? Do the characters have similar experiences that are familiar to your students? And will students be able to see themselves in these stories? And as far as language, does the story use natural language and authentic dialogue that children will recognize? And if this was a non-urban setting, would the vocabulary and dialogue change significantly? And with the scenery, do the illustrations and descriptions accurately and realistically depict urban settings? And will children recognize these settings? Are these settings that they see in their own neighborhoods and communities? And is the urban diversity represented through a variety of characteristics of settings like apartment buildings and sidewalks and vacant lots and local businesses? So Dr. Hisrich is going to join me, and I'm going to have her to use her book that she's chosen for this activity by Barnes and James, I Am Every Good Thing. And we're going to just look at some of those questions that I just presented to you to see if her book will pass that initial test for being a piece of high quality, diverse children's literature. Okay, Dr. Hisrich has her book. So Dr. Hisrich, I'm going to ask you, are gender, racial, and cultural stereotypes avoided among the characters?
So I'm going to look through this book. Gender, racial, stereotypes. You can see some of the pictures. You can all evaluate what we think.
Great. So Dr. Hisrich, while you're in there, does the story use the natural language and authentic dialogue that children will recognize?
Authentic language. So one excerpt from the book says, I am skateboard tricks, scraped knees and elbows. It does seem to be authentic language. I am hilarious. I am the life of the party. I am that smile forming on your face right now.
Great. One more question, Dr. Hisrich. Is urban diversity represented through a variety of characteristics of city settings?
So we have snow and a dog right here. Let's see. There is sports. There's basketball and baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like the home environment. Looks like with trees in the park.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw another picture. Then they're also at a pool.
Great. Thank you. So, Dr. Hisrich, what would be your evaluation of this book? Would you consider this to be quality, high quality, diverse literature to be used in a classroom?
Yes, I would.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so as we are moving out of this segment of our time together, what are some action steps that you can take today to make your book selection for reading instruction and read alouds more diverse? So just jot a few things down that you can do today that you can maybe start when you go into the classroom tomorrow or on Monday. And here are some resources. These are some awards from exemplars for diverse literature that can guide you on book selections. I'd like you to jot down one or two because you will need that to do your work on a little bit later in our presentation. So I'll just give you a moment to write one or two down. Okay, so now let's move on to how we figured out about, what is diverse literature, how it can benefit children. So now we're going to look at using some strategies in the classroom. So Rosenblatt told us that our culture, our background, and all that we are made of It comes to the text with us and it helps us to make meaning. So as you are planning your work around using diverse literature in your classroom, consider reading a book aloud that has strong potential cultural relevance for your students, and notice what difference it makes in your students' level of participation and how they're able to make text to self and text to world connections. So another benefit is positive self-image, engagement in reading achievement, increase in reading achievement. So the more children are engaged and motivated with reading, the more they will want to read. So we want to promote wide reading. So when children see the conversations that they might be having with their friends, when they see themselves and that they are making these connections, we can work alongside the students to support their identities as learners also. So language, we talked before about the big 8 where diversity is honored. So language should be honored as well. So if the teacher is valuing the language, the home languages that students bring to the class, this can open the door to opportunities to strengthen literacy in the learning environment. It also allows students to use their authentic voice in the literacy learning environment, as well as using standard American English. So this gives them space to adjust to a variety of social spaces that will be a great benefit to them as they move forward in their educational careers and in their careers after they leave school. So here are a few quick ways to incorporate diverse literature. We talked about wide reading, book clubs, free journal responses, visual response journals, improvisation drama, readers theater, and modeling response-based discussion. So here are some steps that we can take, some next steps that we could take today. We're going to review our collection of books and apply the questions to ask about each book. And then we're going to take a survey of the books that you have and decide if these books are mirrors and windows that your students need to become engaged readers. And then your action steps, remember I asked you to take 1 or 2 of one of the exemplars from that list. And I want you to take that exemplar, the website or the award, like Coretta Scott King, and then review what the criteria is for book acceptance. So go to that website, review what the criteria is for book acceptance, choose 1 or 2 books that you're interested in using in your class, and then analyze that book with the questions to ask that we reviewed earlier, and then begin planning to use this book in your learning environment and share it with your school team so that using diverse literature is a school-wide phenomenon.
Okay, so now we're going to break down some of these areas of identity that Kim talked about. And the first one we're going to talk about is race. So this first graphic that we're going to show you it goes along with the statistic that Kim shared with us, the CCBC. So that's the Cooperative Children's Book Center out of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And like she said, they looked at these over 3,000 books that were published in 2018, all these children's books. And by and large, the vast majority of main characters are white. So half of these books that our students are looking at, they're seeing white children. And then the runner up is animals. So we really need to be meticulous in how we choose books that we're going to be sharing with our students so that they can be, appropriate mirrors for them, as we've kind of talked about, because these African-American students are only 10%, Asians, only 7% of books that were published in 2018, showed Asian students as the main characters, and then, less and less, 5% of Latinx and only 1% of American Indians. So moving through and looking at race as powering how we choose books, let's talk about it. Kids see race, right? Children see race, and so should we. So research shows that children's awareness of racial differences and the impact of racism begins quite early. Children as young as 3 months old are aware of racial differences, and by the time they're preschoolers, they make choices based on race about with whom they play and how they play. So in the absence of intentional teaching, children are left to come up with their own conclusions about how to think about their own race and others' races. And research suggests that the common practice of ignoring race, that colorblind approach in early childhood classrooms, isn't satisfactory, and that educators must make more active an anti-bias approach to addressing issues of culture and race if they're to enact positive change. So showing children that we see and we value all aspects of them, including attributes, related to race and culture, is a critical step in helping them feel welcome and connected to their teachers and their peers. So some NACCE has these categories for thinking about race-related teaching practices. So the first is the colorblind approach, which is most common, but an ineffective and potentially harmful method in which, adults don't directly talk about race with children. Yet, the absence of an intentional message about race sends a powerful message in and of itself, right? So children are left to develop their own understanding about race, and if they ask questions, they may be met with adults kind of declining to talk about race at school, right? We don't see color. But so an improvement on the colorblind approach is the color aware approach. So to be color aware is to intentionally teach children about race and to tell them that we see and we value their race because it's an important part of who they are. Adults in color aware classrooms bring up race in direct and positive ways and take advantage of teachable moments and respond to children's race-related questions and interactions with books and activities to advance that conversation. So, and then one step beyond color awareness is a social justice approach to teaching about race. So this category is considered ideal because it empowers children to play a role in acting against discrimination. And teachers using this approach to help children learn how to actively recognize and act on race-related injustices. So taking a social justice approach means kind of seeking out those teachable moments that specifically have to do with unfairness or discrimination, such as suggesting children write a letter to a company that makes those flesh-colored bandages, right? To let them know that their products don't match all skin tones, and maybe to propose that either the name of the bandage, as in flesh-colored, be changed, or that the color should be changed. So ultimately, educators can look for opportunities to infuse all aspects of children's learning with color awareness and social justice connections. So although this is ideal, teachers who are new to race-related teaching practices might find it easiest to begin with children's literature, which is an accessible medium for early childhood educators. So using literature as an entry point to discussions about race. Books that provide readers with opportunities to see different aspects of themselves, their communities, and the people they love can serve as material tools that affirm their sense of racial identity. Such books can serve as kind of springboards for teachable moments and meaningful conversations, reflecting on the teacher's color awareness and orientation toward thinking and acting from that social justice perspective. It's important to remember, however, that no book can, fully represent a group or a complex issue. So it's helpful to think in terms of text sets or collections of connected books that address different perspectives on topics. So this first text set, all of the texts in this set directly describe and celebrate physical traits, such as variations in skin color. Books in this text set feature photography or realistic images rather than like a cartoon style art. So the first one is Blacker the Berry, and this is a collection of poetry that encourages children to see the beauty in all skin tones. Each poem features a child of color describing him or herself in terms of skin color. So one says, I am midnight and berries, while another states, I am light as snowberries in fall. And then at the end, there's a wordless page that shows children from all the previous poems kind of smiling and laughing together, which is another opportunity for the kids to reflect on themselves and their identity. The next one, actually I'm skipping down to number 4, is Shades of People. And this book functions as like a photographic essay, and it explores and affirms various shades of skin color in the children featured. So each page is covered in photographs with like a brief text describing skin tone and pointing out just how many shades actually exist. So one line reminds children that even in the same family, there can be many shades. So the next one is hair dance. Oh, you can go back. I'm still talking about the books. The next one is Hair Dance, and that one is very similar to Shades of People. This book features photography again on like brightly colored backgrounds, and the images and text focus on different hairstyles and features. I'm sorry. Children in the book love their hair, which is shown in a variety of styles from braids to dreadlocks. And this it's kind of an upbeat book that embraces the idea of how hair is like works of art and points of pride. And then the last one is Happy in Our Skin. So this is a rhyming picture book, and it presents an array of diverse families and illustrations. And the text, describes the beauty of all skin types. A range of skin colors are described, for example, honey gold and cocoa brown, but other aspects of skin are addressed as well. So one verse states that sometimes skin has freckles or birthmarks or dimples. And so this book kind of invites the readers to reflect on their own skin and take pride in their own physical traits. Okay. So some sample activities. So one thing, because all of these books look at realistic images, one thing that we can do with our kids is these photo biographies. You can use a what are these, like a scrapbooking tool, I'm sorry, like Smilebox, where the kids can create their own photo biography. Teachers can also invite students to create digital stories about, their unique qualities using platforms like Little Bird Tales or Storybird. Students can make comparisons and connections as they see the variations across the pictures in these books. So comparisons and descriptions are key to the literary style of these books about identity. And many of the books compare skin color to food or elements in nature. So teachers could use the text from like Black or the Berry for children to describe themselves. And then they can digitally display their descriptors using a word cloud tool like WordArt or Worded Out. I think even Google Slides has an add-on that does a word cloud. And all these activities, of course, build on literacy skills of both vocabulary and writing. And then finally, as previously mentioned, Happy in Our Skin uses terms such as like birthmark and dimple. So teachers can make interdisciplinary connections to science or health using videos like this one here from, this is the Skin movie from kidshealth.org. Okay, so as teachers work to help children see themselves and embrace their unique qualities, they may integrate an activity like this one from Learning for Justice, which was formerly Teaching Tolerance. This is called Painting Beauty, Creating Self-Portraits. So some of the objectives that they have said are enhancing observation skills, which can be useful for self-reflection and inquiry, developing vocabulary for discussing skin color, race, beauty, and racial identity, analyzing the relevance of commonly used racial terminology, labels, and language, examining portraits and self-portraits by a variety of artists from diverse cultural backgrounds, and then critiquing another student's artwork, offering specific praise and constructive criticism. Of course, that's up to the teacher. Okay, so how this works is you would set up a gallery in your classroom where students would have the opportunity to look at famous artists' self-portraits. And these are just 4 examples. So this first one is 18th century French artist Elizabeth Louise Vigée-Lebrun. And then this other one is a contemporary artist, Kehinde Wiley. The other 2 are probably a little more familiar, Vincent van Gogh and Frida Kahlo. So you're putting these around the room, you're letting the kids look at them, go on maybe a gallery walk, and then facilitating a discussion of what they noticed from these artists and how they express themselves in their own self-portraits. So essential questions like, how can you use close observation skills to feel good about yourself and the people around you? Or what words do we commonly use to describe skin color? So this, go to the next slide. This activity, so once the kids are looking at these, so which portraits did you like or didn't like? How did the artist look at themselves and then portray themselves in this portrait? after doing that, then the kids can create their own self-portraits. And the key here is having mixed palettes of paint, so they can mix and match and, like, you know, connect it to their arm and see how they can make the color look like theirs. And then through this, then they could set up their pictures as a gallery and have students look at them and talk to each other about it. Reflect on how similar or different they are from their peers. And if you go to this website and you can Google, you know, Learning for Justice, the painting beauty lesson, but they have materials, a framework and professional development, specific vocabulary, all the activities laid out, and then even application and extension activities that connect it to Common Core standards. So it's a very comprehensive lesson, but a very easy way for us as early childhood educators to look at race and have these start having these conversations with our students. Okay, so, and then here are some more resources, some book lists. There's so many great book lists out there that specifically address race. And those are the first two bullets here. The last two, How to Talk to Kids About Race, and then 7 essential books. There are more books, but these last two have more professional type materials for adults as opposed to children's books. Okay, so moving on, we will look at gender. We'll start talking about gender and how we can talk to kids about gender and start bringing in appropriate literature to facilitate these conversations. Okay, so as young children develop, they begin to explore gender roles and what it means to be a boy or a girl. So cultures provide expectations for boys and girls, and children begin learning about gender roles from the norms of their family and cultural background. So they also hear messages about gender roles from the larger world around them. Through their interactions and their play exploration, children begin to define themselves and others in many ways, including gender. Children may ask their parents and teachers questions about genders, or take on boy and girl roles in dramatic play and notice differences between the boys and girls that they know. So they may choose certain toys based on what they think is right for boys or girls. They may also make statements about toys and activities that they think are only for girls or only for boys. The ability to recognize when things are the same or different is an important skill that children develop over time. So it's only natural, right, that they start asking questions that will help them sort out the differences between boys and girls. It's easy to see how they may think that being a boy means doing some things and liking some things, and being a girl means doing other things and liking other things. And so while, you know, clear categories exist, a color is not a fruit. A dog is not a tree. So many things that may have traditionally been limited to one gender or another are not inherently male or female, right? So we can develop children, or we can help children develop an understanding of categories that they can include both boys and girls by, you know, straightforward, simple responses like toys are toys and clothes are clothes. These messages can help children learn that any child can, you know, for example, play with a toy or dress up in any kind of clothing. So thinking about the stages that kids go through in gender development in their early childhood years. We begin with infancy, where children observe messages about gender from adults' appearances, activities, and behaviors. And most parents' interactions with their infants are shaped by the child's gender, and in turn also shapes the child's understanding of gender. By 18 to 24 months, toddlers begin to define gender using messages from many sources. As they develop a sense of self, toddlers look for patterns in their homes and early care centers. Gender is one way to understand group belonging, which is important for secure development. By ages 3 and 4, gender identity takes on more meaning as children begin to focus on all kinds of differences. Children begin to connect the concept girl or boy to specific attributes. They form stronger rules or expectations for how each gender behaves and looks. And by ages 5 and 6, this is when children's thinking might be really rigid in many ways. So for example, 5 and 6-year-olds are very aware of rules and of the pressure to comply with rules. So they do so rigidly because they're not yet developmentally ready to think more deeply about the beliefs and values that many rules are based on. So as early educators and parents know, the use of like white lies is still hard for them to understand at this age. Researchers call these ages the most rigid period, this 5 and 6 period of gender identity. A child who wants to do or wear things that aren't typical of his gender is probably aware that other children find it strange, right? So the persistence of these choices, despite the negative reactions of others, show that these are strong feelings. So gender rigidity typically declines as children age. And with this change, children develop stronger moral impulses about what is fair for themselves and other children. Okay, so what can we do? What can early childhood educators do? We can offer a wide range of toys, books, and games that expose children to diverse gender roles. For example, choosing activities that show males as caregivers or nurturers, or females in traditionally masculine roles like firefighters or construction workers. Be creative when reading problematic books, and not only the ones in gender expansive literature, but in the ones in dominant and the traditional canon, fairy tales, award-winning books, change and omit pronouns, names, and gendered language. So like, what happens to Goldilocks and the Three Bears if you use male pronouns for Goldilocks, or make Mama Bear the biggest, or make 2 Papa Bears, change the gender of the trucks in Goodnight construction site so that they're not all male, things like that. And then when you are reading books to kids, actively notice and question the stereotypes you encounter in books. Create the time to support children's discussion and critical thinking by slowing down and asking them questions that help them engage with the text. Okay, so let's read and use some great books. Here are some examples. So Amazing Grace, if you're not familiar, here's a little background. So Grace has an amazing imagination and loves telling stories. When she hears her school will be doing the play Peter Pan, she jumps at the chance to play the lead. Unfortunately, her aspirations are quickly dashed when her classmates point out that she can't play Peter Pan. Grace is not a boy, and Peter Pan isn't black. Grace's family reminds her that she can be anything that she wants to be, and with their love and encouragement, she proves that her identity does not limit her ability to achieve her dreams and lands that role of Peter Pan. The next book is, I didn't even put the title in there, I'm sorry, Jack, Not Jackie. And so this picture book, the big sister realizes that her little sister, Jackie, doesn't like dresses or fairies. She likes ties and bugs. So she eventually identifies more as Jack. And Susan thinks her little sister, Jackie, is just perfect the way she is. One of a Kind Like Me is a beautiful picture book. So in this book, tomorrow's the school parade, and Danny knows that he wants to be a princess, and his mom supports him 100%. They race to the thrift store to find his costume, and so the pressure's on, right? So will Danny find the costume of his dreams? It's a sweet story about like unconditional love and the beauty of individuality. And it lifts up children who don't kind of quite fit, gender stereotypes. The last is Red, a crayon story. And Red, he has a bright red label, but he is in fact blue. His teacher tries to help him be red. His mother tries to help him be red. The scissors try and help him be red, but he's just miserable. He just can't be red, no matter how hard he tries. And so finally, a new friend offers him new perspective, and he discovers what we know as readers the whole time, that he's actually blue. Great story about identity. So thinking about what can we do with these books? So Amazing Grace, one of the activities that you can think about, because Grace was told by her classmates that she couldn't play the role of Peter Pan because of gender and race, starting to think about occupations. So spending some time brainstorming different careers and occupations with your students, and having them draw pictures of people in those various professions, like a firefighter, a teacher, a doctor, a nurse, a police officer, and talking about the responsibilities of each, but then emphasizing that all jobs can be done by both men and women, and that your race and your gender don't define your capabilities. Another great one from Learning for Justice is this: there's no such thing as. So we pose a problem. to the kids. Like sometimes boys and girls make fun of each other because they wear something or cut their hair in a certain way that isn't what their gender usually does. Remember that gender is whether you're boys or a girl. So sometimes someone might make fun of a boy for wearing a pink girl's shirt. And then, saying something like that isn't a nice thing to do. Boys and girls can dress in a way that they want to, or do anything to make their hair they want to. It doesn't matter what their gender is, and making fun of people because they act differently is a type of bullying, and bullying isn't allowed at our school, right? So facilitating this conversation, but offering these questions like, so what should you do if someone says that your clothes or your hair or your actions might be wrong because of your gender? The answer should be, there's no such thing as boys or girls blank. So boys or girls hair or boys or girls clothes. And this activity, you can put in a lot of different scenarios, but just teaching kids that the answer is there's no such thing as these gendered type things. Okay, and then the loaded language. This is just a nice document that shares some commonly used phrases that kind of reinscribe this binary of gender, and it offers some alternative phrases to use. So, instead of saying boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, you guys, change it to things like children, students, kids, comrades, scholars, scientists, everybody, y'all. Really thinking about that when we address our students. We get in these habits of boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, but we're, reinstating those binary genders. Think like the other example, look at that woman over there. She has a cool hat. Well, just look at the person. They have a cool hat, just not assigning those gender roles as much as we do. Okay. Breaking down a bigger activity for Red, a crayon story. So this would be after reading the book, and, Red really, understands that she's blue. So after reading the book, asking your students if they can think of examples or share an identity or part of themselves that others might not know about them just by looking at them. So asking them questions like, some examples might be like, someone who looks at me might not know that my family is Jewish, or they might not know my family's Muslim or Hindu, right? Someone who looks at me might not know that my mom has a different color skin than me. Someone who looks at me might not know that I have two dads. Someone who looks at me might not think that I like basketball because I'm tall, but really I like dancing. Someone might assume I like trucks because I'm a boy, but really I like drawing. So it really gives your students an opportunity to reflect on themselves and think of things that are inside of them, right? That others can't see. And so this is a really great, easy to do activity that you can just print out. There's more to me that you can see, giving your kids the opportunity to write about things that they like, things they don't like, things they feel that outsiders can't see, right? By looking at them. So you'd complete this activity with them, facilitate a discussion, and then, putting it all together in this cute little package, right? This little crayon package, but giving students an opportunity to share their work with each other, talk about their similarities, talk about their differences and what makes them special. You can do this in whole group, or you can do it pair where they can turn and talk, and you can direct that conversation to share, one thing they like about their project, one thing they like about their friends. It really gives students the opportunity to, like I said, reflect on themselves, but then appreciate each other for the things that make them different and perfect in their own way. So again, here are some nice book lists, some lesson plans, some articles that really exemplify teaching gender in early childhood and ways that we can approach it in child-friendly language and using child-friendly materials. Books are just a wonderful way to facilitate these conversations in the early childhood classroom. Okay.
Okay, so another category to discuss about diverse literature is families. As we know, the family structure has changed significantly in the last 50 years. As you can see from this graph, in 1960, there were a lot more married parents that were working. And in 2012, you can see that a lot of them, there's children are living with grandparents. There's about 40% less that are living with just both married parents. And the father's only employed, and the mother works a lot more now in this day and age. And there's more single parents, more children living with single parents, and other families. And this doesn't even include anyone living with two moms or two dads or other types of family structures. So children tend to thrive when they come to understand that there are varying family structures, and that all families are wonderful in its own way. So long as that, the caregivers love them and care about each other. So having this repeated message actually helps children feel secure, even if their family configuration changes through either death, separation, other life events that might happen, moves, or any significant change. Children's growing awareness of diverse family structures provides rich opportunities to help them celebrate family diversity, and also engage them in conversation about who is in their family and who lives in their house and who takes care of them. So it's important that they have these conversations, because when children become aware of diverse family structures, they can ask a question such as can someone have two mommies? And usually children are looking for more of a black or white answer, like a yes or no. Children are not typically trying to seek a deeper level of understanding. What young children really want to do is to find their own place in this world and make sense of their own concept of family, whether it's traditional or non-traditional. Some of the practices that we want to have as educators is to recognize that your own assumptions carry weight and have an impact on the students. So you need to actually be self-aware of what your own biases and your own thoughts are. Also create an environment that has materials that portray all types of families, whether it's literature or materials, making sure that you have photos of all the different types of families, that the children have in the classroom. Allowing kids to notice and talk about differences. So instead of shutting them down, if they ask a question, making sure that you talk about them, engage them in conversation. Having family members come in and share with the class and talk about their family and their backgrounds and, everything that makes them, a good family. Also model curiosity, that it's okay to ask questions, and emphasize the importance of family in itself. Not that the whole structure is important, but the whole idea of family. And having a loving, caring environment and system is important. Some of the books that are good for this, these are just a few actually. The Great Big Book of Families. It features a variety of diverse family structures and where they live, what they work, what they do, where they work. The White Swan Express is actually a beautiful story about parents adopting a quartet of Chinese orphans. And basically the four families consist of a single mom, a heterosexual couple, a lesbian family, and an interracial family. There's the Family Book, and this basically celebrates all types of families, and it's a more humorous approach. Whoever You Are by Mem Fox is a really good book. This doesn't just talk about different types of families, but it also talks about different races and ethnicities and religions. And then there's A Family is a Family is a Family. And basically a teacher in this book is asking children to describe their families, and they're all different. And so they're talking about all types of families, such as people living with divorced parents, someone living with a grandparent, someone, there's LGBTQ families, foster families, and then it talks about how all families are special. So some activities that you could do with any of these books actually is the Family Diversity Project. It's actually a really good organization, and you can actually host this in your school. And so if you go to the website, it tells you all about how you can host something like this. So it could be a virtual gallery, or it could be an in-person gallery. And so you basically have everyone send a picture of their family, and you set up this classroom gallery of all the family pictures, and you can display it. And so it basically celebrates all these different types of families. So when we do like family trees, we also want to think about the alternative part. So one idea, instead of doing a family tree project altogether, is actually just drawing pictures of their favorite possessions or their family versus having them kind of draw their house. And then there's 3 different types of family tree alternatives. You could do the rooted family tree, the family wheel diagram, and the family house diagram. And if you look on the next slide, this shows examples of the different types, like the family house diagram. It shows foster families, step parents and siblings, grandparents and aunts and uncles. So it gives a little bit more diversity and different approach. And then there's the family wheel, and it also does the same thing. It talks about like the birth mother, the birth siblings, the foster family, same thing with the grandparents, adoptive grandparents, adoptive parents. And so it allows children to see, to be able to use their own family structure in a different way instead of the traditional way. Some resources is the Family Diversity Project. There's also Adoption Awareness, which gives a lot of different activities. And there's 8 ways to honor diverse families in the EC classroom that basically gives some like strategies and tips. The Family Engagement and Diverse Families in the EC classroom. This is from Build Initiative, and it provides a lot of different strategies and activities as well. NACI has a site that's called 2 Homes, 1 Classroom, basically about inclusive practices for diverse families. NACI also has something on family engagement in general. And then there's the Diverse Families Bookshelf, diversefamilies.org, and that gives a lot of information about different books for diverse families. Another category is exceptional learners. And so with exceptional learners, there are a lot of things we want to keep in mind. A little bit on the background. Basically, this shows, it focuses on all school-age children, ages 3 to 21, not just early childhood. But it looks at the specific disabilities and the percent in school. And this was in 2018, 2019. The most common types of disabilities are the specific learning disabilities, speech language impairment, other health impairment, which can include illness or ADHD. Other things fall into that category. Autism is ranked 4th, and then developmental delay, which only applies to children under the age of 5. So those are a little bit of the statistics for children with disabilities. So 70% of private early education centers included children with disabilities in the 1990s. More recently, though, data suggests that children in kindergarten or above, there's 5% of children attend private school settings. And you can see in this infographic with Early Head Start that 10% of the total funded enrollment must be with children with special needs. So there's a significant portion going to support children with special needs with Head Start. So children with disabilities are among the world's most stigmatized and excluded children. This could be because there's limited knowledge, limited exposure, and so it can result in negative attitudes and marginalizing of children with disabilities within their families, schools, and communities. So we want to make sure that we expose children to literature and other children and environments where they can interact with children with disabilities. Inclusive preschool classrooms are in the best interest of all young children. Including children with disabilities results in greater empathy and acceptance of differences among all children and an improved academic, social, and behavioral outcomes for children with disabilities. So researchers found that both children with disabilities and typically developing children who attended an inclusive high quality pre-K program made significant gains in early literacy scores. So it shows that the benefits of having an inclusive classroom and having children with disabilities and typically developing children together improves academically, socially, and behavioral outcomes for everybody involved. Some of the things that you can do in the classroom, teach kids accurate and respectful language. Basically saying, we don't say, here's a disabled child, we say children with disabilities, or we say exceptional learner. Making sure you provide opportunities for children to interact with exceptionalities, create an environment that promotes a sense of belonging for all, help children understand the whys about being different, encourage an understanding and mindset that the world is a better place when people are different, and facilitate an understanding that adults and children with disabilities can be active, engaged, and enabled and capable. Children who are exposed to inclusion at an early age become more understanding, develop positive attitudes towards their diverse peers, and are likely to be accepting of children with disabilities. Some literature connected to this. One book is great. It's by Holly Robinson Peete and her brother. It's called My Brother Charlie. And this is told from a sister's point of view about her brother. There's also All My Stripes, another good book by Shana Rudolph. Basically, in this book, Zane the zebra feels different from the rest of his classmates, and he worries that all of them notice about him is his autism stripe. So basically, it talks about, though, his unique strengths that make him who he is. Another book is I See Without My Eyes. This is about a young blind girl who tells how she adapts and functions with her disability and how she does not let it stand in the way of living her life. It basically teaches children about Braille, senses, guide dogs, and other things. Then there's a book called Wonder. And this book, the boy in this book was born with a facial difference that has prevented him from going to a mainstream school. And basically it talks about he wants nothing more than to be treated as an ordinary kid, but his new classmates can't get past his extraordinary face. There's lots of other books as well. If you go back one slide really quick, sorry. There's another book called Understanding Sam. I think this is about a child with Asperger's or autism. And then there's one about color blindness. Eric the Red Sees Green. That's another good book. So activities you could do with pretty much any of these books. There's an activity from Teaching Tolerance, or now the Center for Learning for Justice. This activity basically helps students increase knowledge about people with disabilities and explore ways to sensitively communicate with people with disabilities. So you can basically, there's a handout that you can read and have a class discussion. And if you know someone with a disability, you share your story with the class. And then you talk about like how all people should be treated with kindness and respect. And you work as a class to come up with ways that you can be kind and respectful towards others. With this, to supplement it, is this award-winning, like a short film. It's about 9 minutes long. It's called Ian. He's a fourth grader who has cerebral palsy and lives in Argentina. And that actually can inspire a really good discussion and engage children in rich conversations. Another activity is basically a pretty quick one that you can do called Kindness Starts With You. It's based on this book, and you read the story, and then you can create posters that show kids helping and including others, and then you can hang the posters around the school. It's basically using like certain, kind language, kind behaviors, and different things that you can do. This activity is called Labels. And so basically you have a discussion about labels, and then there's a video that you can watch. And it talks about the impact of labels and what labels are, and about basically labels are just for jars. And so there's two different things to think about when you're talking about labels. Is one, labels are for jars, and we don't want to label people, but it's also important, instead of giving children, you want to give children a way to actually communicate, though, and describe describe their experiences instead of just saying you can't label someone, but you want to be able to give them the actual words and tools that they can to, to talk about children with disabilities. Early labels do give children, labels given to children may remain for life. So that's why it's important that we want to avoid giving negative labels to people. And as you can see, actually in the picture on that slide, it says labels are for food, not for people. This activity is called Fish is Fish. It's about self-acceptance. So it teaches basically how to recognize personal qualities and achievements, appreciate diverse perspectives, and communicate. So basically you understand, explore students' basic understanding of each person. You can ask questions like, does everyone look the same? What does it mean to be an individual? And then you read this book called Fish is Fish. And then you ask children to understand to share their understanding of the story, focusing on similarities and differences. And then students identify characteristics that make frog and fish individuals. And so you can kind of discuss this, and then they can, after this, they can actually talk about the similarities and differences among them. So this is kind of a kickoff for discussing differences and similarities among the actual students. Some of the resources, there's 2 links for children's books that portraying exceptionalities and different abilities. One is from the Peabody School at Vanderbilt, and another one is from Simply Special Ed. PACER is an organization, champions for children with disabilities. And of course, there's also the Council for Exceptional Children, the CEC. Accessible education materials, there's a link that goes straight to like early learning resources. That's a really good one that provides a lot of resources and materials and ideas.
Okay, thank you so much. We're going to go into some reflection for the remaining time that we have together. So think about, all the information that you've taken in today that we've shared with you. How has your thinking changed regarding CRT? And how can teachers create a safe and supportive literacy space for the sharing of diverse literature? And how can diverse literature support the increased reading achievement of students of color? So jot down some ways your thinking has changed since we've started our learning. Continuing with our reflection, what strengths do you have at your school? What are areas that need improvement in regards to engaging with CRT? And now we can think about taking some action. So what can we do immediately to minimize the impact of our unconscious biases or our hidden lenses? And what can we do to promote our personal and professional skills in this area? What would be the benefit? And then to look at the flip side of it, what would be the cost of not doing so? And to whom would this be detrimental to? So I'd like you to read this quote and then just jot down or just reflect about what resonates with you. To reach others, we have to first know ourselves. And to contact the deeper truth of who we are, we must engage in some activity or practice that questions what we assume to be our true selves. So here are some additional resources that we discussed that will be very helpful for you in this journey. Here are some additional references. And we hope that this session encourages us to encourage you to just continue to do this self-work, and that you will continue to be a reflective practitioner in incorporating CRT in your learning environments. Thank you for your time.